Hello everyone, welcome to Options with Doug, streaming live on Monday and Wednesday at 1:30 p.m. Eastern Time on Bookmap Discord and the Bookmap YouTube channel. Before I get started, I need to go through the disclosures. General disclosure, all Bookmap limited materials, information, and presentations are for educational purposes only and should not be considered specific investment advice nor recommendations. Risk disclosure, trading futures, equities, and options involves substantial risk of loss and is not suitable for all investors. Past performance is not necessarily indicative of future results. Here's my contact information. The best way to get in touch with me is through Discord. My name on Discord is Doug P. Also in Bookmap Discord, there's an Options-Doug chat channel. You can post questions, comments, and content related to the topics of my presentation and the topics of the channel that I'll go through in just a moment. I'm also on X. My name there is @Pless. Here are the key tenets to my approach to trading. I believe that options trades and market maker hedging activity are key drivers of price in many stocks and futures, and that certainly applies to the large cap tech stocks like the Magnificent Seven stocks, as well as the equity index futures like the S&P 500 and the Nasdaq 100. And for the S&P 500, SPX is the underlying index, SPY is the ETF version of that index, and the ES futures contract is a derivative of SPX. And when traders buy and sell puts and calls in SPX and SPY, market makers take the opposite side of those trades and they hedge their delta exposure with ES futures. And for the Nasdaq 100, NDX is the underlying index. QQQ is the much more liquid ETF version of that index. And the NQ futures contract is a derivative of NDX. And just like the S&P 500, when traders buy and sell puts and calls in NDX and QQQ, market makers take the opposite side of those trades and they hedge their delta exposure with NQ futures. The focus of my presentation today and the focus of the Options-Doug chat channel is options order flow, the impact of options markets on stocks and futures, and the influence of market maker hedging flow on price action. I have a two-step process for trading. The first is planning, and I use positional analysis. I look at how traders and market makers are positioned in the options market and how those positions change from day to day to develop a thesis regarding the expected trading range and volatility for the day, as well as a directional bias. And the second step in my process is execution. I look at real-time order flow in Bookmap and real-time market maker hedging flow in Spotgamma Hero to confirm my thesis and for setups. And when I talk about setups today, I will be focusing on an underlying asset. Setups in that asset can be taken with futures contracts, shares of stock, or options, depending on the asset as well as the way you like to trade. Questions and comments are welcome, and I will be watching both the Options-Doug chat channel as well as the chat and YouTube for your questions and comments. Please feel free to post. I'll do my best to answer your questions. All right, here's my agenda for today, Monday, July 14th. First of all, I want to go over news items, economic data, and events for today as well as the rest of the week. Then I'll go through my positional analysis. Then I'll review some setups from earlier today. Then I'll take a look at the live market. And when I get to the live market, if anyone has any stocks they want me to take a look at, please let me know and I'll be glad to do that. All right, let's get started with news items. And I'm going to go to the Spotgamma dashboard home screen and I'm going to take a look at the events calendar for this week. So we've got events and earnings this week coming up. All right, so first of all, over the weekend, Trump announced 30% tariffs on the EU and Mexico, and the futures did drop down yesterday evening, and now it looks like the S&P 500 and Nasdaq have both recovered, and it appears the market is now just overlooking tariffs, not too concerned anymore. All right, so the second big event going on this week is it's crypto week, so-called crypto week. There's Congress is considering several pieces of legislation regarding crypto, And as most of you probably know, Bitcoin has rallied very substantially over the weekend up to a high of, I think, over 122,000 over sometime that today in the last 24 hours. All right, so that is the events over the weekend. Now let's move on. Let's take a look at data coming up this week. All right, so first of all, tomorrow, CPI is reported 8:30 a.m. Eastern Time. I'm going to go over economic data first, then I'll switch back to earnings. All right, so CPI tomorrow morning, 8:30 a.m. Eastern Time. And then on Wednesday, 8:30 a.m. Eastern Time, PPI data comes out. Also tomorrow is VIX expiration, and that is at the cash open, 9:30 a.m. Eastern Time. On Thursday, retail sales are reported at 8:30 a.m. Eastern Time. Then on Friday, 8:30 a.m. Eastern Time, housing starts and building permits. And then at 10 a.m., Michigan consumer sentiment. And also Friday is the monthly options expiration for July. All right, so a lot going on this week in terms of events, expirations, economic data, and also earnings. So let's take a look. So beginning tomorrow morning, banks start reporting earnings. JP Morgan, Citigroup, Wells Fargo, and that is before the market opens. Then tomorrow, Goldman Sachs, Wednesday, before the market opens, Goldman Sachs, Bank of America, Morgan Stanley. And then on Thursday, Taiwan Semiconductor reports before the market opens, and that is actually, according to this, Taiwan Semi reports at 2 a.m., of course, headquartered in Taiwan. And then finally, Netflix reports earnings after the market closes on Thursday. All right, so earnings season starting this week. All right, so a lot going on this week. Let's move on to positional analysis now. I'm going to start with the S&P 500. This is the ES Futures and Bookmap. Another day, another rally. Let me point out some key levels on this chart, then we'll take a step back, take a look at our higher time frame. So overnight, ES made a double bottom at the SPY 620 absolute gamma strike. And another level, key level that's been in play for today is the SPX 6245 volatility trigger, acting as resistance before the cash open, then support after the cash open. Hello, Stephen. Welcome. Glad you're here. Haven't seen you in a while. All right, so that is ES. And let's step back. Let's take a look at our higher time frame. Let's go to SPX, the underlying index. This is a chart in Thinkorswim, 1 day, 1 year chart. And of course, the recovery from that began around the February expiration is complete. SPX making new highs. Rally resumed after the June expiration. And it has found resistance right around 62.90. So let's take a look at that. Let's go to a 30-day, 1 hour chart. So in the last week or so, SPX has been in a pretty narrow consolidation range between a low of 6,200, but generally between 6,220 on the downside and 6,290 on the upside. So a pretty narrow range for SPX, recent consolidation of last week. All right, let's take a look at the levels on this chart. First of all, we'll go to the expected moves. Dashed purple lines are showing the lower and upper weekly expected move. This is based on the options market. And this is based on the closing price for SPX from last Friday. These levels remain in place for the entire week. So based on the options market, based on the closing price for SPX from Friday, and then the dashed blue lines are showing the lower and upper daily expected move, also based on the options market, again based on the closing price for SPX from last Friday. Those levels change every day. I do post those in Discord in the Options-Jug chat channel. So far, SPX trading inside both of those ranges. And again, I do post those levels in Discord every day the evening before. All right, let's wrap up our view of SPX. Oh, forgot the spot gamma levels. Let's get back to that. Go over the spot gamma levels. All right, so the dark red lines are showing spot gamma levels. These are based on gamma-weighted open interest. They're provided to Spot Gamma subscribers on a variety of trading platforms. Again, this is Thinkorswim, a 30-day, 1-hour chart. I'm going to point out the key daily levels. First of all, the put wall is at 5,700. That's historically the largest net negative gamma that can be expected to act as support. Certainly not in play for today. Next level up is the absolute gamma strike at 6,000. That's a strike with the largest absolute positive and negative gamma. So that's where most of the gamma-weighted open interest is concentrated. And then above that is the volatility trigger at 62.45, that key level for today, resistance, then support. Then a Spot Gamma's proprietary volatility and gamma flip level. Below that level, market maker's position on the gamma curve is negative. In a negative gamma environment, market maker's position on the gamma curve is below the volatility trigger, market makers' position on the gamma curve is negative. In a negative gamma environment, market makers have to trade with price staged to their delta exposure. That tends to enhance or increase volatility. Above that level, market makers' position on the gamma curve is positive. In a positive gamma environment, market makers have to trade against price to hedge their delta exposure. That tends to subdue or decrease volatility. And note that is based on Spot Gamma's older model. And we'll take a closer look at gamma based on their newer model. So the older model assumes that traders are long puts and short calls for an index. Market makers have the opposite side of those trades. So in a positive gamma, they're long calls, hence the positive gamma. And then finally, the call wall is at 6,300. That's a strike with the largest net positive gamma that can be expected to act as resistance. And of course, that is the next major spot gamma level up above, and it seems inevitable that level will be tested sometime soon. All right, note these levels did not change from Friday, so no changes in the spot gamma levels from Friday, and that is understandable based on the consolidation in the last few days. All right, let's wrap up our view of SPX with a 1-minute chart. So SPX 1-minute chart. Let me zoom out on this just a little bit so we can look at the last couple days worth of data. All right, so you can see the consolidation really beginning Friday. Here's the volatility trigger, 62.45. And again, it acted as resistance before the cash open. And this is for SPX, it only trades during regular trading hours. So this is showing that level acting as support after an excursion down below. And then after this last test, SPX in a very steady uptrend. All right, let's take a quick look at a SPY chart so we can see the SPY levels in play for today. All right, so there's the test of the 620 absolute gamma strike between 2 and 4 a.m. and then a pretty steady rally after that second test. Again, that's the 620 absolute gamma strike. And now SPY may be finding resistance at the 625 large gamma 4 level. And note now, SPY is trading up above its volatility trigger at 624. All right, so that's a 5-point rally in SPY, so about a 50-point rally in ES since about 3:30 a.m. Eastern Time. All right, so those are levels in play. Let's go to Bookmap. So in Bookmap, I have SPX and SPY levels noted on my chart. So again, there's the SPY 620 absolute gamma strike, 6245 volatility trigger, resistance, resistance, then support, and there's that SPY 625 level, now acting as resistance, and also the SPY 624 volatility trigger. Note the congestion around that level, and now price is trading higher but finding resistance at 625. All right, so note there is a difference in price between ES and SPX. And today it's right around, it's between 41 and 42. So for example, the 6250 level, I'm showing at 6290.5. So SPX 6250 equals, or is equivalent to ES 6291.5. That is that ES to SPX offset, again, a 41.5. And there is a ratio of ES to SPY that also changes every day. I do post those index relationships that I'm using every day in Discord. Hello, A. Welcome. Glad you're here. A asks, what is the difference between absolute gamma level and large gamma level? So the absolute gamma strike is the largest, the strike with the largest absolute positive and negative gamma. So that is shown as, let's go back here to the SPX 30-day 1-hour chart. So note these gamma levels are ranked from 1 to 4. So the absolute gamma strike is known as L1. So that's where most of the gamma-weighted open interest is concentrated. And then this 6200 level is an L4 level. And here's an L3 level. So again, keep in mind the ranking. 1 being the most important, the highest level of gamma, and then L4 being the lowest. So it's just a ranking system, and then the L1 is also known as the absolute gamma strike. Oops, sorry. Sorry about that. All right, back to Bookmap. All right, so we'll take a look at setups in just a couple of minutes. All right, so those are the levels in play for the S&P 500. And there were no shifts, again, in levels, key daily levels for SPX and SPY. No shifts in levels. All right, let's go on to Nasdaq now. This is the NQ Futures of Bookmap. And let's take a look at the underlying index charts, then we'll get back to Bookmap. So I'm going to start with QQQ. And same for QQQ. Steady uptrend began right around 3:30 a.m. Support right around the round number 551. And QQQ trading above its volatility trigger. Then here the 555 is a large gamma 2 level. So that ranks just below the absolute gamma strike at 550, which is down below. All right, so that's QQQ. Let me zoom in just a little bit. A little bit more volatile at the open than SPY, but overall steady uptrend that began around 3:30 a.m. Eastern. All right, let's wrap up this by taking a look at NDX. So NDX, remember, just like SPX, key support at the 6245 volatility trigger. NDX tested its volatility trigger earlier in the day, and that's at 22,690. That level, around that level, acting as support. Then a steady uptrend after that, that sharp move lower right at the open. All right, for Nasdaq, NDX, volatility trigger moved a little bit higher, and the put wall and absolute gamma strike moved lower. And then for QQQ, the absolute gamma strike also moved lower. And again, we'll talk about setups in just a few minutes. All right, so here's the test of the NDX 690 volatility trigger. And then, again, remember that was a little bit deeper pullback below that level, but a quick recovery just after the cash open. Now Nasdaq finding resistance at the QQQ 557 round number level. And again, there's a difference in price between NQ and NDX, and also a ratio between NQ and QQQ. And again, I do post those levels in Discord every day. And NQ working its way up to the upper daily expected move. All right, let's wrap up our positional analysis by taking a look at Gamma. And I'm going to go to the Trace tool. Take a look at the Gamma heat map and Trace. This is available to Spotgamma subscribers. Red shading is showing negative gamma. Blue shading is showing positive gamma. And remember, positive gamma, market makers are trading against price. We're looking for slower movement, mean reverting price action, or maybe a grind higher. That's in the blue shading, positive gamma. And red shading, looking for faster movement, more trending price action. But right now, SPX is definitely in a pocket of positive gamma. I'm going to zoom in on this just a little bit so we get a little bit closer look at this. Also, you can see the blue GEX bars over here to the left. That's market maker's position, positive gamma. Note the stability index at 89%, and this is the highest I have seen the stability index in at least two to 3 months. Probably since February expiration, so that's very high stability index. So definitely looking for lower volatility today and a grind into positive gamma, and that's exactly what's happening. And again, we'll take a look at setups in just a few minutes. Actually, we'll take a look at setups now. All right, so that sets the stage for what we're going to look at now. So let's start with some setups. Then we'll get to the live market. And AS, could you please speak a lot more on trace and charm, please, and give example of use? I'll speak about it some. That's not, I will talk about it some, but I suggest you go to the spotgamma.com website and you can find plenty of information on trace and charm there. But I will cover it in context of what we're looking at today. All right, so let's start by taking a look at the S&P 500. And as always, I'm going to start by taking a look at what options traders are doing in the S&P 500. This chart is the hero chart, Hedging Impact Real-Time Options. It is showing options trades and market maker hedging activity for the S&P 500 index components. That is SPX, SPY, ES, and XSP. So you can see the call buyers. That's shown by the rising orange line. Call buyers definitely driving price higher today. So I've already separated out puts and calls. And net for the day, traders are buying calls. That's shown by the rising orange line. When traders buy calls, market makers sell the calls. In this case, they are buying ES futures to hedge their delta exposure. So looking at this time of day, it's very clear that call buyers are driving price higher. And traders are buying puts. That's shown by the falling blue line. But it's pretty obvious the call buyers are driving price. Looking at it earlier today, it was a little bit more noisy. Key entry points here, as the orange line was rising, are these tests of the 6245 volatility trigger. And the third test being the one right around 1035 that actually took off. All right, so that is that's the first hero signal that we can take a look at for the S&P 500. And the next is the S&P equities. And this is showing options trades and market maker hedging activity for all 500 stocks in the S&P 500 index. And I think it's pretty clear today that the index signal was providing a lot more clarity. And note also the delta notional here of the call line. Right here, this is delta notional right around 408 million. Let's go back to the index signal, and that's almost 5 billion. So based on that delta notional value, pretty clear. Also just the shape of the line, that call buyers and the index components are driving price for the S&P 500. Well, let's go back to Bookmap now. Go back to ES. We'll zoom in. Zoom in a little bit more, so we're just focused on cash open right here at 9:30. 9:30 cash open. Quick drop down. Then the call buyers come in. Support at VWAP. And it really took this third test right around 10:30 before the S&P 500 ES really got going higher. All right, so let's take a look at order flow now. So you can see after that third test of that level, also VWAP, some aggressive buyers starting to come in. That's shown by the cumulative volume delta here. That line starts to rise. And then as price was chopping up and down around that level, large traders were buying with iceberg orders. They quickly sold that. But at that point, the call buyers had, I think, taken over, as well as aggressive buyers shown by the rising cumulative volume delta, as well as buy stop orders shown by the rising yellow line. So aggressive buyers, buy stop orders, call buyers, all driving the S&P 500 higher. And again, right now, as of right now, finding resistance at the 625 large gamma 4 level. All right, so that's the S&P 500. Let's take a look at Nasdaq. Actually, I'm going to extend this line a little bit. So this trend line marking the nice deep pullbacks for long entries. Let's take a look at Nasdaq. So key here, I think, was actually, let me zoom in just a little bit. Pull back to 690, volatility trigger that had acted as support before the cash open. Kevin, welcome. Glad you're here. Kevin says, good afternoon from Lakeland, Florida. All right, after the cash open, again, a deeper pullback down below the 690 volatility trigger, and then the aggressive buyers start to come in. Price moves higher. Note also the large traders with iceberg orders. They were fading this move down. So as price was moving down, you can see all the aggressive sellers. Large traders were fading that move. They were buying the weakness with iceberg orders. And unlike the S&P 500, they really didn't fade that move higher after. So it's been a longer process for large traders selling with iceberg orders. But that is, of course, countered by aggressive buyers, shown by the rising magenta to dark blue line, as well as the rising yellow line, showing buy stop orders, fueling the move higher. All right, that's Nasdaq. Let's see what options traders are doing. All right, I didn't think the Nasdaq signal was as clear as the S&P 500 index signal. So just like the S&P 500, the Nasdaq has two. The Nasdaq has two signals that we can take a look at. This is the index signal showing options trades and market maker hedging activity for the NDX and QQQ, the underlying index components. And net for the day, this is pretty flat. All right, let's take a look at Mag 7. This is the other signal that we can take a look at for NASDAQ. This is similar to the S&P equity signal, which is actually the Mag 7 plus 493. All right, so it took a while for this to get going. So again, of all the index signals, I thought this one was the most clear. All right, Stephen asked, the call buyers on ES Hero, that's only 0 DTE, right? All right, so Stephen, I'm assuming you mean the S&P 500, the total index signal. And that's what I typically look at. I don't look at the individual components of this, since they all have an influence. So I assume this is the one you're talking about. Let me know if that's correct. So the purple line, so I've combined puts and calls now into the purple line. And then that's all trades. So this is all expirations. I'm going to turn on the teal line. Now that's showing 0 DTE trades. And this is pretty typical recently that most of these trades are 0 DTE. So you wouldn't say it's only 0 DTE, but you would say it's mostly 0 DTE. So no long-term commitment, just shorter-term traders buying calls. So we can now separate out puts and calls again. So this, again, remember the orange line and the dark blue line are all trades. That's all expirations. And then the call line, the green line, is 0 DTE. And this lighter blue line, that's also 0 DTE puts. So what it looks like here is the calls are more short-term. So a good portion of the calls today, the call buyers, just like Stephen pointed out, are 0 DTE, but the put buyers are a little bit longer term. All right, Stephen, thanks for pointing that out. Let's go back to just all trades now. So again, in summary, call buyers mostly 0 DTE, put buyers mostly longer term. All right, so those are the trades in the index. Similar chart, sharp pullback right at the open, then a resumption of the rally. All right, let's take a look at some stocks. I'm going to start with Apple. And let's go back to Hero. Let's see what options traders are doing. I'm going to stick with puts and calls. All right, so what this chart is showing is from the open, traders were selling calls and buying puts in Apple. The flow alert comes in just after the cash open. Signals significant options activity, get your attention. And this is what is called a bearish opening drive, also bearish momentum. When traders sell calls and buy puts, again, that's bearish momentum, bearish opening drive, bearish momentum, and then key support at the 207.50 hedge wall. Not even a round number, 207.50 acts as support almost to the tick, and traders start buying calls, selling puts, and Apple tries to recover after that bearish opening drive. All right, let's go back to Bookmap. Whoops. Support at the 207.50 hedge wall. Looks like absorption at that level. So it didn't. Apple did not quite trade down to the 207.50 level. Absorption at level, but this set up a very nice short. Again, that bearish opening drive. And for Apple, I believe 210 is the, let's check that level. 210 is the key gamma strike. So Apple broke below the 210 key gamma strike. And support at the 207.50. A ask, isn't the flow alert supposed to tell about the reversal? Not necessarily. If I saw a flow alert down here later on in this move, a few minutes later in this move, I would look for a potential reversal. But this early in the, just after the cash open, a couple of minutes after the open, I'm looking for a continuation of that move. So that's how I look at these flow alerts. But if the flow alert came in, in this case, maybe 25, 30 minutes after this move down, I would look for a reversal. So the flow alerts can often signal a shift in hedging flow. In this case, that would be from negative delta to positive delta. And we may see some examples of that later on today. But in this case, just a couple of minutes after the cash open, I'm looking for a continuation based on that alert. So this is one way to find something to trade. Just watch the alerts. So what you can do is open up the sidebar here, go to alerts, and just watch for these alerts. Then when you see an alert, click on it. All right, so in the case of Broadcom here, and this would be especially true of Broadcom, what's trading up at the call wall. Note this looks like maybe the beginning of a call peak pattern, which is a bearish reversal pattern. So a flow alert, I would watch for a call peak pattern. Then I would watch order flow and Bookmap for a potential reversal. And I would focus on that even more if it was at the 280 call wall. Let's close that. All right, Apple was the first stock that I wanted to take a look at. And let's take a look at NVIDIA. NVIDIA, this was a bearish opening drive, bearish momentum, didn't last long. flow alert came in early in the move, I would say, so, but it was a very short move. V-shaped recovery right around 162. So it only lasted maybe 12 minutes, something like that. 12, 13, 14 minutes. And price reversed higher. So let's go take a look at Bookmap. NVIDIA, again, remember, very brief. Bearish opening drive, V-shaped reversal. So NVIDIA headed down toward the high liquidity at 162. Those are limit buy orders. Looks like absorption at that level. Looks like NVIDIA did not take all those orders, did not consume all those levels. So those limit buy orders at 162, maybe some were consumed, but not all. Aggressive buyers start to come in. You can see the shift in green volume dots. Volume dots in Bookmap show market buy minus sell. Green dots indicate more buyers than sellers. And price moves right back up to the 165 level. Liquidity at that level, that was consumed. And now NVIDIA is just hopping up and down around that 165 level. Let's go back to Bookmap. And you can see the, again, bearish opening drive, sharp reversal. Call buyers, put sellers, take the foot off the gas, put their foot on the gas again, off the gas, and now NVIDIA consolidating right around 165. All right, so that's NVIDIA. Let's take a look at Tesla. All right, Tesla, in this case, this flow alert did act as a potential reversal signal. Note also Tesla broke up above the 320 call wall. And then what you're looking for is the call peak pattern to confirm the reversal. So that's what happened. It looks like Tesla started to reverse lower, and then maybe the call sellers followed shortly behind. Let's zoom in on that. So it looks like the call sellers were following price just a little bit behind, a few seconds behind. Tesla reversed lower and really stopped when the call sellers took their foot off the gas just after 10:30. So mainly call sellers driving Tesla. And let's take a look at Bookmap. And I am going to take a look at some crypto stocks. All right, again, remember 320 call wall. Price initially traded up to 322, reversed very quickly. Aggressive sellers came in, shown by cumulative volume delta. Call sellers, nice pullback entries for short, till the call sellers took their foot off the gas. All right, so that's Tesla. All right, let's take a look at a crypto stock, Circle. Stablecoin play. Nice rally today. Let's see what options traders are doing. Go to Circle. Circle is not nearly as liquid as stocks like NVIDIA, Tesla. This is decent delta notional. 50 for calls, 26, 27 for puts. We can compare that with NVIDIA, for example, which Circle's actually higher. Let's check Tesla. All right, so I take that back. Decent liquidity in the options for Circle, and put sellers and call buyers definitely driving price and Circle up to the 200 key gamma strike, call wall. So nice uptrend today. Put sellers, call buyers up to the 200 call wall key gamma strike. So liquidity in Circle, options liquidity definitely improving. Whoops. It is a recent IPO. Nice uptrend pullbacks to VWAP. Long entries. Up to the liquidity at 200. Again, the call wall key gamma strike. Note all the limit sell orders in the order book from 195 up to 200. So a lot of overhead sellers up above. All right, that's Circle. Let's take a look at a couple of other crypto stocks. I don't have either of these stocks in Bookmap. The bid-ask spread and CoinStrategy are just too high for day trading. Okay for long-term positions, but not for day trading. The bid-ask spread can be between 50 cents and $1 for these two stocks. So pretty choppy price action for Coinbase. Let's take a look at the total signal. So a little bit more clarity when we shift to the total signal, helping to mark the swings, the highs and the lows, as traders buy and sell puts and calls. MicroStrategy, much more clear. Bullish opening drive. Let's shift back to puts and calls. And I'm going to have to go jump back. All right, MicroStrategy or strategy, much more clear. Call buyers, call sellers, driving price. Full alert right after the cash open. Aggressive call buyers. There's your first call peak. Second call peak. Setting up a nice short. So call buyers and call sellers definitely driving price and strategy today. I looked at IBIT earlier. I didn't see. So IBIT for the day, net for the day, call sellers and put buyers. That is the one of the Bitcoin ETFs. Robinhood, pretty choppy today. Down below the call wall now. All right, that stock I wanted to take a look at is Palantir. More of an AI play. And Palantir, very nice uptrend today. Call buyers and put sellers driving price in Palantir. Flow alert, bullish opening drive, and traders continue to buy calls in Palantir. Let's go to Bookmap. Deeper pullbacks. Nice entry points. Pullbacks to VWAP and below. Net for the day. Rising cumulative volume delta. So traders buying calls, selling puts. Market makers take the opposite side of those trades and they have to buy stock to hedge their delta exposure. And then also aggressive traders buying buying shares of stock. Liquidity targets at the round numbers. These limit sell orders were in the order book before the cash open, and then more came in up above after the cash open. Palantir seems to be reversing at these liquidity levels, moving down and then moving back up. All right, let's move back to the SP 500, and let's wanted to take a look at more about trace and charm. So let's go back. Let's go to the trace. So in trace, there are 3 heat maps that we can take a look at. This is gamma. So again, I'm looking at this in terms of volatility, price movement, potential support and resistance. In blue shading, positive gamma, I'm looking for slower price action, potential resistance. It looks like that may be what's happening. That is what's happening at this GEX bar here, showing the largest positive gamma. That seems to be increasing. So you can see 60 minutes ago that was 80, 30 minutes, 85, 10 minutes ago, almost 107 million. And that's a 99th percentile. So that is an important level, the 6270. And you add 41.5 points to that to get to the equivalent ES level. So we can do that. Let's go back to Bookmap. So you can see that is right around 6211 there. All right, back to trace. All right, so that's a gamma heat map. All right, A, does that make sense? And this is the way I like to look at it. I like to look at the GEX bars just like this. All right, we can also take a look at delta pressure. So in positive gamma, the red shading indicates selling pressure. So we see this is what you would expect in positive gamma is selling pressure above with the red shading and buying support below. Again, we expect this in positive gamma, selling pressure above, buying support below. And that's exactly what is shown here again in positive gamma. Note the stability index has now gone up to 98%. Whoops. Having trouble with my pen tool today. All right, so now 99% stability. All right, so that's delta pressure. Let's take a look at charm pressure now. So charm pressure is showing buying and selling pressure due to time decay or the passage of time. So this is showing buying support below, selling pressure above, just like delta pressure, and a potential pinning target right here between the blue buying support below, red selling pressure above. And no surprise, that's at 6270. So that's the most likely pin target for today. And that all lines up with this large gamma bar here. All right, so it's only 210. Actually it's 224. This is updated every 10 minutes. So it's 224. So a little over 90 minutes to the market closes. But again, this is showing most likely pin target at right at the current levels. Let's go back to Gamma now. Jim says, another Florida viewer, Daytona Beach. Welcome, glad you're here. Good to see all the viewers from Florida. All right, let's check Hero again. Let's go back to the S&P 500. So the call buyers have taken the foot off the gas now. The force that had been driving price higher is now stalled, at least. Gone for the moment. Let's check S&P equities. Also appears to have flattened out. Back to Bookmap. And again, ES stuck right under this SPY 625 large Gamma 4 level. Right in positive gamma at the potential pin level. Let's check Nasdaq. All right, does anyone have any stocks they want me to take a look at? Zoom in on Nasdaq. All right, Nasdaq stuck between QQQ 556, 557, right around NQ 23,050. All right, questions, stocks. Or let's go back and check Hero. Let's see if any alerts come up. Let's go back and check Broadcom. We wanted to check what happened after this most recent alert. All right, so it looks like Broadcom is kind of stuck. Just consolidating after the morning move. So Broadcom, pretty similar price action. Bearish opening drive, quick reversal. Remember the index is reversed higher right around 945. Very typical trend day price action. Gap up, pullback, then rally resumes. Brief bearish opening drive, then traders start buying calls, selling puts. Take the foot off the gas, consolidation. Let's check a couple of other alerts after that. IWM. Nothing so far. Robinhood. This could be signaling a potential reversal higher, or just significant options flow. Looks like Robinhood down at the low of the range for the day. Let's check Bookmap. Go to Robinhood. Yeah, down toward the low of the day. All right, back to Hero. Let's check a couple of other stocks here. Earlier today, and let's see if it's on my watch list. There were some strong stocks. Rocket Lab. Rocket Lab is in aerospace and defense. This group has been very strong. Whoops. Thought I had Rocket Lab. All right, there we go. Bullish opening drive. Traders buying calls, sell puts. Price breaks above the call wall, 40 call wall, key gamma strike. Traders are long calls, market makers are short calls. As price moves higher above the call wall, market makers' position becomes more negative. It becomes those calls go deeper in the money, become more negative. Market makers have to continue to buy stock to hedge their delta exposure. So rally up until about 10:30. Then the call buyers take the foot off the gas, and Rocket Lab consolidating. Classic pattern, somewhat of a call peak pattern there. Bullish opening drive, call buyers and put sellers. Foot off the gas about an hour later, and price consolidates. And stock that has been very strong recently. All right, last call for questions, stocks. All right, so it looks like the call buyers have come back in for the SP 500. Let's go check Bookmap. Go back to ES. All right, so ES breaking above this resistance at 625. Multiple test. Now breaking up above. All right, last call for questions. All right, everyone, thank you very much for watching. Thank you for your questions and comments. Have a great afternoon, and I will see you on Wednesday. Thanks. Bye.